there's an executive order that came out in September of 2019 that I think maybe we missed. And I think it's important for where we're at right now in our society. So hang in there. We'll talk about it in a minute. Hey everybody, this is Deb with Truthification Chronicles, and I gotta start with this one before we get into the executive order. I'm not gonna read it to you because I will just laugh all the way through it, okay? Now, I don't know if you know about the Babylon Bee, but it's a nice satire site, and they do a really good job, but this one's gotta be probably the best one I've ever read, because it's Trump installs ejection seats throughout press briefing room. I love the picture. And then it goes through and it talks about it. And of course, imagine if that were the case. And this article is just too funny. So you've got to read it. All the links I always put down below, they're in the description. So you have to click like something to open that description. And on mobile devices, that's usually a little triangle. Or, on the regular browser, it's the show more link. So make sure that you check out the description for those links. They will be there. And so this one is a gotta read and gotta share, okay? But make sure if you share it that people understand this is a parody site. So it's not to be taken seriously, obviously. But anyway, this one I thought was just kind of humorous because the Bongino report tweeted this out. Look at this. They actually did tweet this out, but they deleted it, okay? So he put on a face mask, and it's black. I have not even seen a black face mask out there. I've seen like floral ones that people have sewn together in different colors, but I never saw one that was black. And it seems that evidently Ralph Northam has a real issue with black and his face. I just couldn't believe it when I saw that. So yeah, there it was. But again, they deleted it. So they didn't want that up. All right, now let's get down to a little bit more. Before we get into the executive order, I did want to address this because I had several people pointing this out. Okay, here are my thoughts on this. I see that this is filed in a court, okay? But here's the thing, folks. Anyone can file anything in a court. They really can. They can make a lawsuit out of anything. It does not mean that what is contained in this document is true. All it means is that whoever this person is alleging this. Okay? So, in my opinion, this isn't going to go anywhere. Just, that's in my opinion. Because, first of all, you can't really have as the plaintiff the world's people. And all of these are not plaintiffs. Plaintiffs have to be somebody specific or some organization specifically. I mean, just saying, and everybody in the entire world, it just is not going to work. I'm sorry. I know there are some people that want this to be true, but, and it is true that it was filed, but that doesn't mean anything's going to happen with it. I just can't see this going anywhere. I would be surprised if the court even listened to it without dismissing it right off, because it's just overreaching. It's not going to happen, folks. So don't get your hopes up. I saw this 3 or 4 weeks ago, I think it was, but I didn't think it was worth bringing to your attention because, again, it's not going to go anywhere. It's put together very amateurish when you read through it. So I don't think a real lawyer put this together. And like I said, anybody can file something. It doesn't make it true. So just be aware of that. That's my opinion on it. If it does go somewhere, I will eat my words. So, but I'd be very, very surprised. And again, the world's people, there's not even an apostrophe there. The world's apostrophe S. So I'm just thinking that no, they're not going to take it seriously. The court will probably just dismiss it. And then we go on to the executive order, because I'm not sure, but I think maybe this was POTUS getting ahead of the game. I'm pretty sure it is. And I kind of wonder what is going on behind the scenes because of this. So this is an executive order on modernizing influenza vaccines in the United States to promote national security and public health. This came out, it was on September 19th of 2019 that POTUS put this together and signed it. Now, this is very interesting because essentially what he's doing here, it starts out and it talks about findings that influenza viruses are constantly changing as they circulate globally in humans and animals. Relatively minor changes in these viruses cause annual seasonal influenza outbreaks, which result in millions of illnesses, hundreds of thousands of hospitalizations, and tens of thousands of deaths each year in the United States. And it goes through and it talks all about the different things that they're finding, all these findings. So when people say that Trump wasn't prepared, you just need to show them this executive order because this came out in September. So they were prepared. And vaccination is the most effective defense against influenza. And it goes through all influenza vaccines presently in use have been developed for circulating or anticipated influenza viruses. These vaccines must be reformulated for each influenza season as well as in the event of a pandemic. Gosh, he was talking about a pandemic. When? In September of 2019. This is even before the October Event 201. Keep that in mind, folks. He was ahead of the game. I tell you, our President Trump is really on the ball. And so it goes on and talks about the current domestic enterprise for manufacturing influenza vaccines has critical shortcomings. Most influenza vaccines are made in chicken eggs using a 70-year-old process that requires months-long production timelines, limiting their utility for pandemic control, rely on a potentially vulnerable supply chain of eggs, require the use of vaccine viruses adapted for growth in eggs, which could introduce mutations of the influenza vaccine virus that may render the final product less effective, and are unsuitable for efficient and scalable continuous manufacturing platforms. In other words, they just can't get ahead of things, and they have to develop these vaccines on basically a crapshoot basis because there's different strains of flu viruses out there. And when they develop these vaccines, because the process takes so long, they have to just guess what's going to come up that season. And it's a hit or miss thing. Are they going to hit the right virus? Or is it going to be a different strain that everybody gets sick from this year? They don't know. And again, the process is so long and everything. Now, for some of you, I think you're probably saying, well, all vaccines are not good. Maybe not. And I think what's probably happening here is that President Trump is trying to set up good vaccines, ones that are not going to be detrimental to our health, and they're not made by the globalists, and they are going to actually help us fight off these viruses. So what I'm wondering is, this sets up a task force to start the process of finding better ways of creating vaccines, faster, more efficient, and more targeted to what that particular virus is, to modernize the domestic influenza vaccine enterprise to be highly responsive, flexible, scalable, and more effective at preventing the spread of influenza viruses. This is a public health and national security priority. Okay, so I think this definitely was getting out ahead of everything because he organized this National Influenza Vaccine Task Force, and that's what the goal of it was, to get on the ball with making better vaccines, safer vaccines. And I think that's significant here, people. So when President Trump is talking about everyone being vaccinated, I don't think he's talking about the Bill Gates type of vaccination. I think he's talking about a different kind of vaccination that will be effective and actually help people. So think about that. I mean, if that is true and it has no detrimental effects, that's a very good thing. So keep that in mind. I can't say for sure that's exactly what's going on or that's the vaccine they're going to come up with, but it seems to me like he set this up in September to try to find those things, to find a way to do it better. And I can't help but wonder if it wasn't to get ahead of what's going on right now, because this guy knows what's going on, and he knew that he needed to get out ahead of it because that's likely what they were going to use. It just amazes me sometimes how much he knows, and when I'm looking back at some of the decisions he's made, he knows so much more than, definitely the mainstream media gives him credit for. But he really gets out ahead of stuff. And if you noticed, I'm recording this on Wednesday night, and I think it was Tuesday's daily briefing or maybe Monday's. But he was talking about the black population being more susceptible to this coronavirus. We talked about that in a previous video, remember? And I said they're going to use that to try to frame him as another way to maybe set up another impeachment thing. But because he brought it up at the presser, now they can't do that, because now he's displayed concern over that, and it's not going to work if they try to use it against him. See, he's just out ahead of all of these things. It's like they've got some little plan scheming, and he gets ahead of them in the news. And it amazes me. And I think that's what this particular executive order is, that he had an idea they were going to do that. And so he said, let's make this executive order and we'll stop them in their tracks, because if we already have this process going where we're already developing better ways and safer vaccines, then we don't have to rely on the people who are creating vaccines that are not necessarily good for the American people. And it's just very interesting. You wouldn't hardly think that on a task force for vaccines that you would have the Department of Defense as the first primary person listed there, but they are, because it's definitely a national security issue. And then the Department of Justice has somebody. And, agriculture, I could understand that, and Veterans Affairs, I guess, and the Homeland Security, and, it just is very interesting that these are the ones that he's put on there, and he's made this committee. So what are they going to do? Well, they're going to try to come up with a report to the president and figure out a 5-year national plan to promote the use of more agile and scalable vaccine manufacturing technologies, and to accelerate development of vaccines that protect against many or all influenza viruses. So I think it's very interesting that this came out in September of last year, and here we are with a pandemic. Very interesting. So I wanted to point that out to you. Like I said, I can't say for sure that this is him getting out ahead of it, but to me, that's what it looks like. That he had an idea, maybe intel, that that's what was going to happen, and that's what they were planning, and he jumped right out ahead of them, and he got this group going. Maybe the vaccine that President Trump is talking about is a product of this right here. So maybe they have a vaccine, they've found a better way of making them where it's more accurate, and it is an okay, healthy vaccine to take instead of something that might damage you. So anyway, let's go on. Candace Owens posted this. Apparently, doctors and nurses around the world are wondering why no one is dying from heart attacks and strokes anymore. Flu and pneumonia deaths also went off a cliff. Turns out everyone is only dying of coronavirus now. Gee, I wonder why. And here's a New York Times article. Here it is, called Where Have All the Heart Attacks Gone? And it's very interesting to read this. This is actually by a doctor here. And he's puzzled. He's like, we can't figure out, why is it we're not seeing these ER cases that we should still be seeing? If somebody has a stroke or a heart attack, we should still be seeing them in the ER, but they're not. Well, at least not in the quantities that they're used to having. So this was kind of an interesting article. I'm not going to read through it, but he points out that it's just unusual. We've never had so many empty beds. And our hospital is usually so full that patients wait in gurneys along the walls of the emergency department for a bed to become available on the general wards or even in the intensive care unit. We send people home from the hospital as soon as possible so we can free up beds for those who are waiting. But the pandemic has caused a previously unimaginable shift in the demand for hospital services. So you've got to kind of wonder what's going on. And he says, what is striking is that many of the emergencies have disappeared. Heart attack and stroke teams, always poised to rush in and save lives, are mostly idle. This is not just at my hospital. My fellow cardiologists have shared with me that their cardiology consultations have shrunk, except those related to COVID-19. So where are they going? I mean, you can't tell me that people are not having heart attacks and stroke. Why are there less of them? That is a huge question for us to ask. And so he really doesn't have any answers here. He's just asking questions. And I think it's a good thing when they ask questions, but it does point out what's going on. Something's fishy. Something's unusual. Well, this is another doctor here, and he has a little bit to say about it too. He wrote this on March 30th, but then there's an update from April, I think it was 5th, down at the bottom. And he is pretty much concerned about it being a public health apocalypse or panic and anti-American. And he has some very good things to say here. He's questioning what's going on. And he's saying, well, coronaviruses have been known in the United States since their discovery over 50 years ago. And, he's talking about this. And he talks about the rates of death and illness that we're really not seeing that many. Now, I think this number is bigger now. I don't know. Obviously, he wrote this in March 30th. So it has changed. But he's trying to put it in perspective here with all the types of deaths that there are and, what's going on. Now, I want to take you down here. He says this, testing of high-risk people, those who most likely would get COVID-19 due to exposure to confirmed COVID-19 patients or travel from high-risk areas, reveal that 90% of patients are testing negative. In other words, they have not evidence of disease. Why is that? Most likely, these patients have pre-existing immunity to the virus from previous exposure to COVID-19. I thought that was very eye-opening because we have to ask ourselves, is this really something new or has it been around for a while and we're just having it all blown out of proportion right now? What's the deal? And I agree with this guy pretty much that it's been blown up a lot more than it was, and that there shouldn't be the extremism that we've seen with it. Now, one of the things that he has down here, this is a really good article, and I wish I could read it all to you, but I'm just not going to do that at this point because I'm sure you can read. The link will be down below. But I wanted to show you down here. Here's who he is. Martin Dubrovec, MD, allergist, clinical immunologist, allergy and asthma specialist of Cadillac, Michigan. I don't know why there's two Cadillacs there. I guess that's the name of the actual practice, and then it's in Cadillac, Michigan. Been there, done that. So this is something that I thought was very interesting. He added this on the 5th of April. State lockdowns aren't having an impact in COVID-19 death. Many states have instituted a massive lockdown, stay-at-home order, of their populations to address the COVID-19 pandemic. Some states have chosen not to do so. The goals of these lockdowns have included the proposition that they would slow the spread of the coronavirus SARS-CoV-2 virus, which causes COVID-19, and thus prevent death. Is this helping? One way to look at this would be to compare the COVID-19 deaths in states that do and do not have stay-at-home orders in place. Although these comparisons have their limitations, nonetheless, the statistics speak for themselves and can be used to assess the effectiveness of a lockdown policy. As an example, let's compare Michigan with states that do not have a stay-at-home order. When adjusted for population, here is the breakdown of COVID-19 deaths per population of the state as of today. And again, this was as of April 5th. And you can see here that Michigan does have a lockdown order. None of the rest of these have it. And then you have the total deaths and you have deaths per million. And you can see that obviously Michigan is much, much higher than the rest. And so that's one type of statistic to look at. But we can also look at this. Now let's compare states that have a lockdown order compared with a neighboring state that does not. So Mississippi has one, and you have a total of 43 deaths, but that's 14 per million residents. And then Alabama does not have a lockdown order, and they have 9 per million residents. So the lockdown state has a higher number of deaths per million. Missouri, same thing. Missouri has one, and it's higher than Arkansas that doesn't have one. Illinois has one, and it's much higher than Iowa that doesn't have one. Colorado has one. Nebraska doesn't. Minnesota has one. North Dakota and South Dakota don't. That one's kind of the same no matter what there. Then Idaho has one, and they have more than Utah that doesn't. So it looks like there is no reason for the lockdown type orders that we have, that they're not really being effective. Obviously, it's not conclusive, but it does kind of look like that from those statistics. And so then you look at this. He also points out the average U.S. deaths yearly from these sources: heart disease, 647,000, and cancer deaths per year, 558,000. Then you look at all the rest of these, and down here as of April 5th, there were 9,528. It really does pale in comparison to all the rest of these different types of deaths. And so he says the COVID-19 pandemic is a serious crisis not to be taken lightly. Our response to it should not make it worse. And he believes, and again, he's an MD, he believes that it's making it worse when we're having the stay-at-home orders. So thought that was just a very interesting article. I'll leave the link down below and you can read it on your own. It really is worth reading. And then this one, the CDC Director, you may have already heard this. I heard it on the news earlier today. Coronavirus death toll will be much, much, much lower than projected. So, yep, that's the deal. He's saying it, and he's the CDC Director. Dr. Robert Redfield predicted that the death toll from the Chinese coronavirus, and he doesn't just say much lower, he says much, much, much lower. And I think that's pretty good. Is it because of Americans following social distancing recommendations? I'm not so convinced that that's what's causing it. After reading the last guys, I don't know that the social distancing is really what's making it so much, much, much lower. I think it's probably the use of the hydroxychloroquine and the azithromycin, adding those in, because a lot of doctors are now starting to prescribe those, and they're having very good results. So anyway, I just wanted to point this out, that at least according to him, it's much, much, much lower. So I think that's a good sign. It's hopeful. Pass that around, let people know. But I also wanted to point this out to you. I should have had this with the Candace Owens one. Sorry about that. I had it in the wrong place. But this is from the CDC, and this is their guidance for certifying deaths. Now, if you heard Deborah Birx's talk, she kind of gave the impression that, yes, pretty much anybody who tested positive for COVID-19 would be labeled as a COVID-19 death. That really is not totally contradicted in this. This is, kind of going along with that. Not exactly, but it does give the idea that even if the person didn't test positive, if there were signs or symptoms that seemed to appear that they were from COVID-19, then yes, they should list that. Whether it was primary or secondary had to do with how close to their death it was, or what stages they went through with their death. So it's not totally true that all deaths were being recorded that way if the person tested positive or if they even look sick with the COVID. But it does appear that it probably is skewed a little. And I know I watched the presser that they had today, which again is on Wednesday. And yeah, Deborah Birx seemed to contradict that and say, oh no, people are not listed as dying of COVID if it's not really the reason they died. But I don't know. I think it could be stretched, and I think if you get the right people, the right mentality, they could definitely twist that. So anyway, all right, enough about the virus. Let's go on to something else because I've got more stuff to show you. This is something, there was a tweet that this Matt Garrahan put out, and I don't have it right now. I had it up and the website was giving me really problems from the Wayback Machine. So if you put this link right here into the Wayback Machine, you'll get it because he deleted it. And so it's not posted here. But basically what he was saying is there was a New York Times article that if you looked at it closely, it said Trump had stock in a company that makes this hydroxychloroquine. Yeah, well, if you look at this, and that's what Cernovich here is talking about, he says, you're a financial reporter and you can't read a prospectus? And so if you go down here, in the end, he had 2.9% worth of $15,000. That's $435. So really, is this something you need to worry about? I don't think so. No, don't worry about it. Okay, then we're going to go on to this one. It's something that we need to be on the alert for because this is what's happening. The Democrats are desperate. They know they can't win against Trump. They know Sleepy Joe is snoozing away, and he's not going to make it to the election. He won't even make it to a debate. So they've got to do something. They are desperate. And so what are they trying to do? Well, now they want to federalize the entire election system. Well, part of the reason that our systems are set up as state-run elections is because it keeps voter fraud from being rampant. If you federalize it, it will open the door for a lot more voter fraud. And contrary to Jim Acosta, who asked about voter fraud at the presser today, there really is a lot of voter fraud, and there's a lot of evidence out there to support it. So, of course, President Trump didn't take that evidence with him to a presser on the coronavirus, but I guarantee some of those statistics are going to start coming out because there's a lot of documentation about it, folks. And so this was kind of an interesting article because, yes, the Democrats want to change things, and you've probably already heard it, that they're trying to get this whole idea of the mail-in voting to be the standard way, and vote by mail is essential. Well, I'm going to tell you, folks, my very first time to vote was in the 1980 presidential election, and I was at college at the time, so I got an absentee ballot, and I was so proud to go through that. I read the ballot carefully and everything, and I marked my choices. Well, the ballot had to be certified by a notary public. So I went in to a notary and I presented the ballot and I said, I want to get this notarized. And the notary said, no, I can't do that. And I said, why not? You already marked it. You have to mark it in my presence. I said, well, then I'll mark over these. I'll do it again in your presence. No, they wouldn't take it. I was devastated because that was my very first presidential election. I was voting in it and I was so proud. Yeah, but that's the way it works. And it should work that way. At the time, I was a little perturbed, but now I understand. I wish that's the way it was all handled. When people have to vote by mail, you have to have it notarized. That would cause a lot of problems for the Democrats because then they wouldn't be able to have dead people vote. Because it's really hard to get a notary to sit there and verify that a dead person is signing something. And they have to have the ID, of that person in order to verify that's who this person is that's marking it. So this is something different, though. This vote by mail, there would be no reason to have any kind of validation whatsoever that the person was who they said they were. Mickey Mouse could vote in this election if they would get this vote by mail. Not only Mickey Mouse, but Minnie and Pluto and basically all of them. Anybody who wanted to. Dead people, illegal immigrants, pretty much all of them. Anybody who wants to vote. You could have a bunch of the drug cartel leaders from Mexico could vote. Oh, why not? I mean, it wouldn't matter. They couldn't stop it. Because if it's vote by mail, how are they going to know? There's no way to check IDs. And so when she says it's essential to protecting the future of our democracy, that is a bold-faced lie. It's exactly the opposite. That it would destroy the future of our democracy. And besides, we are a republic. Anyway, so President Trump obviously is fighting against that. Republicans should fight very hard when it comes to statewide mail-in voting. Democrats are clamoring for it, tremendous potential for voter fraud, and for whatever reason doesn't work out well for Republicans. Well, the reason is because the Republicans don't cheat. We actually do our election the way it's supposed to be done, and we don't find ways to cheat the system. Now, I also want to point out on this that the Democrats are very likely going to hold up another stimulus check, another helping out people during the coronavirus type check. They're going to hold us hostage over this because this is what they're going to demand in order to give people more financial relief from what's going on. I'm telling you, it is their plan. They needed to destroy the economy because that's what Trump was running on. They couldn't stand that, so they had to destroy the economy. How did they destroy the economy? Well, looky what we got. We've got this virus that suddenly the person who comes here on the very day that Nancy Pelosi decides, oh, gee, now it's time to take those articles of impeachment over to the Senate. Let's do it today. After waiting for how long? Gee, because I think, this is my speculation, I think she expected the Senate to vote for witnesses, and that way it was going to drag out for 3 or 4 weeks. By then, the person who was infected was going to be able to infect an awful lot of people, and it was going to run wildfire through our country. But Trump was ahead of the game yet again, and he shut down the China. Even while all this impeachment garbage was going on, he was starting to get wind of what was happening, and he didn't let it happen. Plus, our Republicans in the Senate stopped cold the whole drag this out forever. Because you see, if you can keep the government shut down, it destroys the economy. And they're already setting things up for another possible shutdown in the fall when this virus comes back around, which it does. Viruses do that. They go away in the summer when it's hot and, you don't have all the bugs that you do because the sun and the warmth usually takes care of them. And so they've already kind of hinted at, maybe it'll come back in the fall. I bet right before the election. In October surprise. So I think things are being set up, but I also think that President Trump is ahead of the game. And then I wanted to show you this because this is news that you're not getting because everybody's talking about the virus. So nobody's talking about these things going on. ICE has flown home 113 U.S. citizens from Honduras, and they flew home 124 from El Salvador. ICE Dallas arrests Salvadoran gang member wanted for capital murder. There's a Central Illinois teacher coach arrested for you know what. And then ICE Air brought home 69 citizens. And then you have, and that was from Nicaragua and Honduras. ICE HSI shares tools to keep children safe online. I mean, there's a lot going on here, but nobody's talking about it. I mean, this one's disgusting here. These people. And there's several of them. You know, here's another one. 9 Arizonans indicted. And then you have 114 citizens from El Salvador. British man charged with shipping mislabeled and unapproved treatments for patients suffering from COVID-19. And here's more. Flying home from citizens from Colombia. San Diego Tunnel Task Force uncovers sophisticated cross-border drug tunnel under the U.S.-Mexico border. Now, I can't help but wonder if that's when POTUS keeps talking about light at the end of the tunnel. Is this the tunnel he's talking about? You know, I know what other people are saying, but I just can't help but wonder if that might be it. Look at this, 1,300 pounds of cocaine. I mean, there's a lot of drugs here that they found, and it's 5 different types of drugs were found inside a tunnel. And of course, the tunnels are also used then to move people around and children. So anyway, I just wanted to show you this. It's got several things that you can see that have been going on, and that it's not that this isn't important stuff. It's just not getting any airtime because everybody's focused on the virus. So yeah, just a lot of these crimes, different kinds. This was a juvenile victim. It's just sad. A lot of it. So I wanted to point this out to you. It goes down for just a little bit. Well, there's another one. Threatening minor. Oh, just sad. Here, MS-13 arrests. So anyway, those are good things to look into, and ICE is doing a lot. They're just not getting any credit for it. And then this was an article that the 17th letter of the alphabet pointed out about John Durham. It's really an interesting read, although there was one section that kind of gave me a little bit of a pause because he said some nice things about Robert Mueller. And it's like, yeah, I don't think Robert Mueller's that good of a guy. So other than that, though, this guy appears to be somebody who is very closed-mouthed about his investigations. He will not talk about them. There will not be leaks from his office about his investigations. And he appears to be somebody that both sides, until, of course, now, both sides respected very highly during the Obama administration, because they said that he was really an honest, square shooter. So anyway, this is near the end of the article because I think this sums it up pretty well. From all this, we can surmise a few things about Durham's ongoing investigation into the launch of the probe of Donald Trump and his potential connections to Russia during the 2016 campaign. Durham will not speak to the press at all until he is done, and probably not even then. He and his team are extremely unlikely to leak. He is not afraid to reach conclusions that will disappoint or frustrate Attorney General Barr or President Trump. He will not be rushed. There is no guarantee that Durham will reach any prosecutorial decisions before the 2020 elections. Now, I'm not sure about that because we have heard rumors that it will come out in the summer. So we'll see on that. And he will investigate so extensively and thoroughly that no reasonable observer will be able to argue that something important was missed. As Sullivan describes Durham, he will be in constant pursuit of the truth and the facts and the evidence. John doesn't take days off. He is methodical, but he is always working. And, you know, he's prosecuted a lot of big names when it comes to crimes. And so I think this is something that's definitely going to happen. Now, he is somebody who will prosecute. He doesn't hesitate to prosecute, and he doesn't care about the person's politics. But he will not prosecute if he doesn't have enough evidence. And the very fact that he changed over into a criminal investigation indicates to me that he found evidence of something that caused him to switch it over from just an investigation looking into how it got started into this kind of criminal investigation. So then it says here, if Durham chooses to bring charges against any official who launched the Trump probe, history suggests he is extremely likely to persuade a jury to convict the accused and sustain those convictions upon appeal. And if he does not bring charges, it is extremely unlikely that any other prosecutor could have succeeded. Regardless of what the official did, the evidence would not be there to convict or sustain a conviction. So if he does it, if he brings charges, it's pretty much a slam dunk, because evidently he is very, very good at what he does, and he has a very good conviction rate. So I guess that's a good thing to look for. This is the article right here, and it came out November 4th of 2019. So wanted to show that to you. And then there's this, which I think is kind of leading into it. Trump-appointed federal judges allow DOJ to resume federal executions. Now, I didn't know that this was in question, but evidently it is, because a federal appellate court in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday cleared the way for the Department of Justice to resume its execution initiative, voting 2-1 to lift a lower court's November ruling prevented the policy from taking effect. So evidently, I knew Barr had put this out there, but I didn't know that it was being appealed, although it doesn't surprise me. But so it looks like it's moving very well. I don't know if it'll have to end up going to the Supreme Court, but this is got to be in place before everything starts coming out, folks. This has to be solid because it's going to be necessary. And then Schiff is whining because the new DNI Grenell is making changes in the intelligence community, and he's not consulting Schiff about it. I mean, this is just crazy. It's like, who'd have thunk it? The guy is making changes. House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff sharply rebuked Acting Director of National Intelligence Richard Grenell on Tuesday for his management changes to the intelligence community and demanded that he address some of Schiff's concerns. You must do what I say. And so down here, I like this part. I am writing to express my concern that you are pursuing organizational and personnel changes at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence without consulting and seeking authorization from Congress, and in a manner that undermines critical intelligence functions. Oh my goodness, Schiff. He just can't stand it, because this guy's probably going to be getting rid of all those Schiff operatives. And so he's cleaning house. And Schiff is not happy about it. Now, as far as I know, these people under him are not somebody that has to be run through Congress. I don't think they have to go through the process of the Senate approving them. I think it's this guy is the head of this office, and he gets to say who works for him and who doesn't. And that's why he was put in there, so he could clean house. And of course, Schiff is not happy. I just think it's kind of funny. And the last thing I have for you is I just want to give you a little word of comfort, because the White House does have a plan in case there's an apocalyptic asteroid. Just wanted you to know. So, I don't know. There's rumors that there is one out there. This is from 2017 even. I just wanted to put this in there just to let you know, because POTUS is always ahead of things. Like I said, with this whole thing, he is on the ball. And so, of course, they published a plan for how they hope to combat the threat of an apocalyptic asteroid. So now, tonight, you can sleep well, because POTUS has your back. He will be watching for those apocalyptic asteroids. So that's what I've got for you on this one. I want to thank you for stopping by, and I'll see y'all later.